The Bible tells us in John 16:33 that in this world we will have trouble. Even as Christians, there will be tribulation, and we will experience at least one crisis, if not multiple in a lifetime. But there really are only two options when it comes to how we handle the crisis. Today we're going to discuss what a crisis is and those two options. And more importantly, how do you handle your crisis? How have you been handling it? Let's find out, shall we? Do you feel completely broken? Are you facing obstacles like depression, anxiety, addiction, divorce, grief, or all of the above? And you're awake at night wondering how you're going to overcome it all? Well, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the Broken to Blessed podcast. Here you'll gain strength, encouragement, and victory as you learn how to fight your battles the right way. Not with your flesh, but with scripture, prayer, and God on your side. Hi there, I'm Randy, a work in progress. My battles have been many, from addiction to depression, and most recently, divorce. I've felt lost and broken and wondered how I was going to survive. But God is bigger than our problems, and if you're walking a dark season, know that there is peace that passes all understanding, even in the midst of our storms. The pain is only temporary. God will not leave you in the valley or let the fire consume you. No matter what you're facing, He will hold you up with His righteous right hand. You, friend, are redeemed. So don't lose heart and don't give up. God's going to make your life crazy good as we go from broken to blessed. Let's do this. Hello, dear. Welcome back. I pray you've had a blessed day so far. Before we get started, FYI, I've been working on some new things for the website. So in the coming weeks, I very much appreciate the patience as I pull it all together. I've realized over the past couple months that there is a lot to do, and I'm not always able to respond in the way that I would really like to. So please bear with me as I try to figure all this out and sort through the areas that have fallen to the wayside. This is a one-woman show, y'all. And I'm working as best as I can to pull things together in the way that God is instructing me to do. So in the meantime, if you can like or subscribe or rate this episode, that helps me out so much, and I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for all the support that anyone has shown me so far on this show. I truly, truly appreciate it. Okay, so moving on. Today we're going to talk about crisis. Dun, dun, dun. If you don't know, I've experienced a few myself, actually. Most recently, last year, my life hit the fan, we'll say. And in a lot of ways, I'm still in it, y'all. I'm still going through this battle. I think I'm in a good place. Don't get me wrong. I can see God moving and working and guiding me each step of the way. And that is such a blessing. But when we're hit with crisis, there's really only two ways you can handle it. But first, let's establish a definition of crisis. The dictionary describes crisis as a crucial or decisive point or situation, especially a difficult or unstable situation involving an impending change. It also describes crisis as a sudden change in course or an emotionally stressful event or traumatic change in a person's life. All good definitions. So here's some examples of a crisis. A sudden death and the grief that follows, a breakup, marriage separation, or divorce. Hello. A dark season of your marriage that you can't seem to get out of. Loss of a job or income source. A sudden move from the home. An addiction that transforms from casual using to everyday use or multiple times a day use. Dealing with the addiction of another person. Or dealing with sudden toxic choices of another person. And this can be a friend, a spouse, a child, you name it. Of course, there's a lot more. These are just a few. The ways in which people experience crisis is varied, and the details can be unique to that individual. But one word that really stuck out to me as I was reading these definitions is this word, unstable. That means not stable, not firm, unsteady. Is there an area in your life where you're feeling unstable right now? Not able to stand firm. The second thing that stuck out to me about this definition are the words decisive point. That means a deciding point, or further, a deciding time. A time in your life that you come to a crossroads. Something is about to change. And it's not something we really want, but we are powerless to stop it. That is a crisis. Which way are you going to take? How are you going to handle this crisis? There's only two ways. Let's discuss the first. So the first way is you turn away from God. There's a couple different people that fall into this category, and so let's discuss the first person. The first type of person is a person that experiences a crisis, which starts a chain reaction for them to allow sin to take hold of their life. So you can look at it this way as an example. A person experiences a death, and so then they do blank. The blank could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be sex, you fill in the blank. Whatever the case, if you're this person, you are walking away from God and putting yourself in the driver's seat. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is dangerous. Why? When you make the decision to do your own thing, to essentially turn your face away from the Lord, you're inviting the enemy into your life to take full control. You're saying to God, I don't want to do it your way anymore. I want to do it my way. I can handle it. I got this. I got this. And maybe you're saying to yourself right now, well, I've never turned away. I haven't turned away from God. I still believe in God. Maybe so. But you can tell if you've turned away from God by how you're walking. Are you walking and doing things the world's way or God's way? Are you listening to the world tell you what's best for you, or are you listening to what God is saying is best for you? How do you even know the difference? I'm going to tell you right now, if it's of the world, it's going to pull you farther away from God and farther into sin. So 1 John 2:16 says, "For everything that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world." So if you're following lust, which can be described as sexual lust or even just the desire to use, and you're prideful about what way you're walking, which means you don't want to listen to no one about no thing, unless it's, of course, in agreement with you. You're walking in the ways of the world, not the way of the Father. You have turned away from God, especially if you're not even in His Word. It's like just collecting dust on the shelf as we speak. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter if you're praying before you sin or while you're sinning, doing the thing, whatever the thing is, because the Bible tells us in Proverbs that the sacrifices of the wicked are an abomination to the Lord. The sacrifice of your time to pray to God is an abomination because you don't really want to listen to what God has to say on the matter. You're not walking in His ways. The Bible also says, do not trust such a person's pretty speeches, since in the heart lurks 7 abominations. There's a saying, and it's sin is going to cost you more than you want to pay and keep you longer than you want to stay. And boy, oh boy, is that the truth. Here's the thing too. If your crisis has made you turn away from God and towards the world, you're going to have a hard time hearing Him as time goes on. That voice is going to get dimmer and dimmer over time. Your discernment is going to be all screwed up. And that means that you will fall for all the enemy's schemes. And no wonder, because even Satan himself comes disguised as a being of light. Satan is going to make you so dang confused. He's going to bring people into your life that listen to your problems, validate them, make you feel special. Oh, I can't believe you feel this way. Oh, I do too. But the difference is that they're going to lead you in the wrong direction. They will lead you to slaughter because they are of the world. They are not walking with Christ. It's really dangerous, y'all. Now that's the first person. They have a crisis, and instead of walking with God, they turn away and they allow the enemy to pull them into a life of sin. Before they know it, they are so entangled in the sin that they have a hard time seeing a way out. And, by the way, I just want to say as a side note, there's always a way out, but they just have a hard time seeing it. The second person that turns away from God is the person that has been scorned. They experience a crisis. Perhaps they have been praying and praying and praying that God would pull them out of a situation or turn things around, and it just didn't happen. And so they turn away from God. They say, I'm done. I am done. I am done. I cannot do this anymore. And they walk away. If you're this person, understand that by turning away from God, you're still putting yourself in the driver's seat. You're being honestly prideful because you think you knew what was best for you, better than God Himself. You're placing your judgment above God's judgment. And this is dangerous. Listen, there's a reason that God allowed the crisis to happen. We don't know what that reason is. Sometimes it's because God is protecting you from something else happening, or protecting another person from experiencing something else happening that would affect you. Sometimes it's because He needs you to take path B instead of path A. Sometimes it's because you need to learn some things first. And sometimes it's because He needs your path to cross with someone else's. There is a list of reasons, and I could go on and on, but I'm not God. Point being, when we put our judgment above God's judgment, it's saying that we know better than God. I have talked to people that have straight told me, He didn't pull me out of this. He didn't do this. I had to go through this. He left me there for X amount of years. Heartbreaking stories, y'all. I'm not trying to make light of these stories. Hard stories. But if this is you, let me ask you a question. Are you still there? If you're looking backwards, saying He didn't pull me out, are you still there? Or are you in a different place? See, this is mainly about mindset. Where the first person used crisis to dive deep into sin, the second person reacted to crisis with a weak mindset, a weak faith. In both cases, crisis caused these people to turn away. In both cases, the heart was hardened. And if left unchecked, it can turn bitter. Bitter with unforgiveness. Bitter with resentment. And bitterness leads to death, not life. Does all this make sense? I hope so. But there's a better way. There is a better way to handle crisis. We're going to talk about it. So the second option when experiencing crisis is to lean on God to get you through. As I said in the introduction to this episode, Jesus told us, in this world you will have trouble. The rest of that verse, though, is take heart, for I have overcome the world. You see, he has the victory already. He has already overcome all the crisis of the world. Your addiction, nailed to that cross. Your heartache and grief, nailed to that cross. Your lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life, nailed to that cross. It is finished. So when we go through crisis, we should not be surprised. Life is not full of rainbows and kittens. I'm sorry. I wish it was. I wish that life as a Christian made us exempt from trials. But Peter said in 1 Peter 4:12, Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you as though something strange were happening to you. We should not be surprised at the fiery trials, at the crisis moments, at the crossroads of our lives. This is part of testing, which makes us stronger, by the way. It also helps us comfort others going through the same things, which I discuss in episode 43. But when we go through the crisis, the best way to handle it, the only true way we will find peace, a peace that passes all understanding, is leaning on the Lord in times of crisis, turning to Him for answers, even when we don't like the answers, even when we don't like the results. True facts. We have to be able to steward pain, which means we have to be able to handle, to manage the storms, the crisis, and the trials of life. God is asking you, can I trust you with this hardship, or will you turn away? The Israelites constantly turned away from God, which is why they got stuck in the wilderness for 40 years. That trip was only supposed to take 11 days, by the way. Tell me that's not nuts. And if you, honestly, if you feel burned by God, like He left you, I have to remind you of this. God sees what we don't see. He's heard conversations we haven't heard. He knows all the possible outcomes of any given situation. Two things you have to remember about God. He cannot lie, and He cannot learn. First off, God will not lie to you. If you've been praying for something and He has confirmed it for you, don't allow this crisis, this dark season, make you turn away from Him because you're tired of waiting on Him. Because there is a reason for the waiting. Second thing, God cannot learn. I know this sounds bad when you first hear it, but actually it's really good. God cannot learn because He knows it all. He is all-knowing. And if He is all-knowing, that means He knows what's best for you. The question is, will you trust Him? Will you trust Him in the waiting? Will you trust Him in the crisis? Will you trust Him through this trial? Will you trust Him through the breaking? Will you trust Him through the molding? Will you trust Him through the making? Will you trust Him through the tears? Will you trust Him every single day, no matter what happens? Or Are you going to put yourself in the driver's seat? Or worse, Satan in the driver's seat and allow him to ruin your life? The Bible says that the prayers of the righteous are God's delight. Your prayers when you are walking with the Father through crisis are His delight because you're turning to Him. You are asking Him. It also says that the prayers of the righteous person has great power as it is working in James 5:16. Oh, friend, don't you see it? He is working it all for your good. I know life is hard. I know the storm is difficult to bear. I know it feels like the walls are caving in and you can't breathe. I know it feels like you're suffocating slowly to death. I know the heartache feels like you're dying. I know the feeling of wanting to drink yourself into a state of numbness because you cannot take it anymore. And I know the regret that comes from using when you told yourself you wouldn't. Life isn't easy. It's so hard. But that doesn't mean that we give up. That doesn't mean that we turn away from the one being that can help us the most. His words will not return void. He is using this time in your life to make you unshakable. He wants your faith to be unshakable. He wants you to stand firm. And after having done all, to stand. Don't give up now. Don't walk away now. Don't put your faith and trust in the world because they will fail you. I will fail you. Your friends, your family, your spouse, at some point, they will fail you. But God will not fail. He won't. If you take this way, if you handle your crisis this way, if you turn to God and lean on Him during your crisis, you will find peace and joy you've never had before through the storm. You will rest in knowing that everything is going to be okay. All that depression, all that anxiety, and all that heartbreak, whatever you're battling with, it's going to melt away. He's going to change your heart and change your life. You have to trust Him. So thank you so much for listening. I pray you have been encouraged today. I will be back next week because, as I said before, I'm still working on some things, trying to manage my time. I have a lot of moving parts right now, but rest assured I will be back next week. I pray you have a blessed day. Be sure to sign up for my newsletter at brokentoblessed.com, and I'll catch you next time.